This is a Time Warner Cable community presentation.
The opinions expressed on this program are solely those of the individual participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of either Spectrum Generations or Time Warner Cable. Mature Lifestyle is made possible by Knowlton Hewins Roberts Funeral Homes and Cremation Service. Our homes are warm and welcoming, and we take care of you and your family like we would our own. Call us anytime. We are here for you.
Hello and welcome to Mature Lifestyles. We made it through the winter and we are celebrating summer and the many outdoor activities that are available to us in Maine, and we deserve it. We're so excited, and to help us find all the many opportunities for us, we have Rex Turner, who works for the Bureau of Parks and Lands, but he knows a lot about what's going on there and has got some great tips for us. So Rex, welcome to our show.
Oh, thank you.
But before you get to tell us about the great fun things to do, tell us how you got into the Bureau of Parks and Lands and your interest in the outdoors.
I got into the Bureau of Parks and Lands 6 or 7 years ago as my position I have now, which is an outdoor recreation planner. And I work in Augusta. I work around the state with public reserve lands, state parks, and partners that we have in the woods and on the waters. And I guess as far as getting into this passion in general, I think like a lot of people that I work with, it started really young. I guess in my case, my grandparents and running around their farm and woodlot and that kind of thing, and just have always had that deep passion for being in the outdoors here in Maine.
Well, you're lucky, and Maine is lucky to have you with that passion. I think people who you're working with are also passionate about the outdoors too.
Yeah.
So, as you and I were talking a bit earlier, there's something for everybody. We're not limited by age or physical condition or anything else, are we? What's out there for us?
There's pretty much a little bit of everything for anyone's interest, as long as you have some passion for getting out in the outdoors, and that could be something as rigorous as hiking backcountry trails on the Appalachian Trail, or paddling on the Main Island Trail, or on the coast there's the Northern Forest Canoe Trail, and sort of some of these wild, remote things. And then there's some very accessible, easier opportunities to go on bird watching programs with a short walk, or to have accessibility to historic sites where you can understand the state's heritage better, watch wildlife, get out with kids and seniors and everybody of all ages.
Right. So the whole family could go.
Oh, yeah.
You could take
yeah.
your grandchildren, and if you could keep up with them, right?
Right,
And they challenge us every day.
We see that a lot. We see, whether it's at state park campgrounds or on trails or at the beaches, we see multi-generational groups, and it's wonderful to see that, and it really is something for everybody.
Now, there's some parks that we all know, and then there's some that might be less well known. What are the parks that people call most often about that they already know, state parks?
Well, I think there's some of them that are places like Sebago and Popham, Reed. Some of these are Camden Hills State Park. There's there's
They're
a whole
very popular,
very
aren't
popular
they?
ones
Yes.
that people have a lot of tradition going to, family memories going to. But the idea is that there are state parks all around the state.
In every part of the state.
Aroostook was the first one.
Tell us about that one, the first one.
Yeah, it was the first state park in the system, and that was approximately 77 years ago or so. Yes. And a great example of landscapes and things to do and trails in Aroostook County, and looking out over the mix of forests and agricultural lands. It's a beautiful place. And then down to the south coast and the western mountains, and down east, Quoddy Head State Park. There's really
got oceans, mountains,
yes.
lakes, trails, just anything.
That's right.
And I think you mentioned bird watching was something people like to do as well. So that means being very still and quiet versus paddling that canoe.
Yeah.
And do you have people asking you what equipment they need? Do they need like fancy hiking shoes, or how do they access the state parks?
Well, it depends what you want to do, and certainly we are even more and more starting to provide rentals and things at certain parks. You can
Yes.
rent canoes and kayaks if you don't have your own. And
So where can you do that?
oh, there's a number of places. I stayed last summer up at Peaks County State Park in central Maine area on Sebec Lake, and I took advantage of renting boats there. There's a lot of, there's places that you can do this. But as far as other equipment, there's a lot of them, it doesn't require thousands of dollars, or you don't have to be Superman or Superwoman. There's something for
Something
for everybody. Yeah.
Let's say the bird watching, for example. If you don't have, what do you need? The binoculars, I guess, or?
Yeah, and that's a good example of things. One place that there's a great bird watching opportunities. There's a lot of our state parks and public reserve lands are part of the Maine Birding Trail.
Yes.
And there's you can learn more about that.
Well,
but
I'm going to stop you
yeah.
right there on that one, because I understand you've got some amazing photographs of some
Yeah, sure.
special state parks. And I think one of the first ones was about osprey watching.
Yeah.
You want to tell me about that?
Sure, and that's a nice.
Describe an osprey to people.
Yeah, if you're unfamiliar with an osprey, it's slightly smaller than an eagle, and they have some of the same lifestyles of hunting fish, and arguably the ospreys are actually a little better at it. The eagles kind of then
Right.
harass them sometimes and steal their fish. And but one of the places that we really associate with osprey watching is Wolfneck Woods State Park in Freeport. There's been a nesting pair of ospreys there for quite a long time, and it's in a place where you can go to a very easy trail to a
How
observation
wonderful.
point, and there's programming at that park, both bird related and other. That's a great destination for kind of getting out on some easy to moderate trails, experiencing this coastal environment, seeing wildlife, learning about ospreys. There's some, there's staff there that can help you understand the life history of these birds.
How
and
wonderful.
So that's
What a
another
great
destination.
opportunity.
Yeah.
That should be on our list for the summer.
That's right. It's a
So
good-
you have
good
another
bucket list,
photograph
yeah.
on another trail, I believe.
Yeah, and that's just a picture
Which
of
is this trail?
Yes, that's another trail at Wolfneck Woods.
Okay.
Just to give you a little flavor of, that we do have a range of, just like all of our recreational offerings, there's a range. There's some really rugged, challenging trails, and then there's some very
But you have a choice.
moderate pathways.
You have a
yes.
choice. You might start that easy trail and decide, I'm going to work up to that harder one, because
Yeah,
you're going to
and-
be so excited by this opportunity.
Right, and Wolfneck Woods is another good example of a place where we do have accessibility there for even people in wheelchairs for some of the.
Oh, is
some
that
of the,
right? So you
paths,
shouldn't
so.
call your department, I suppose,
Yeah.
to get all the inside
Yeah,
information.
definitely. We love to talk to people. So when you have
All right.
questions
I
and
think
things,
they'd
we
like to
can-
talk to you,
yeah.
Rex. Now let's move to the coast. What do you have there?
Quoddy Head State Park in Lubec area is really, it's far eastern Maine, an incredibly gorgeous part of the state in Washington County. And I think a lot of people may be familiar with the lighthouse, which, as I understand, for another guest we have today would be a good connection there. But there's also some other unique natural features there, and one of the places that's really a great opportunity to see is this coastal bog environment, and there's a boardwalk there, and that's what this picture is showing. It's a really
Really
fascinating,
and very
beautiful
famous
area.
too, isn't
Yes.
it? Beyond Maine's borders as
Right,
well.
right.
Exactly.
It's very iconic.
Well, let's go down the coast to Mount Blue State Park.
That's right, swinging back west in the Western Mountains, and just again, I work with trails a lot, so sometimes I have a little bit of a bias towards talking about trails, but there's a lot of great opportunities for
So
swimming.
these trails,
and-
let me ask you this
yeah.
about trails. They're maintained.
Yes.
When you work with trails so that they're ready for us when we get there.
That's the
All
idea,
right.
and it happens in a whole variety of ways depending on the types of trails. But,
Okay, I'll bring you back to the state park.
Yeah, but it's just there's a lot of opportunities for family and really opportunities for things like swimming. We have a lot of both coastal and
Let's not
inland
leave that out in summer.
swimming
Even though the
opportunities.
water's a little cold, it's worth it, isn't it?
It's right. It's worth it. It's good stuff.
And I'm going to take you to one of my favorite places in the universe is Colonial Pemaquid.
Yeah, and our state historic sites are, just because they're historic sites doesn't mean they're not also natural destinations and scenic,
Right.
beautiful areas.
Dunes and the sand.
They really help us with our mission. Of one of the things we want to do is help convey the historical heritage that we have in the state and have people really understand and appreciate what Maine is as a state
Right.
and what our history is and how things have developed over time. And so this is a good example of a
really
place you
it's-
can learn some of that history.
It's preserving our historical artifacts as well as preserving our environment so that we can enjoy these scenes that you're talking about.
yeah.
What's your next picture?
Just to give a shot of some of the, again, this whole spectrum of recreational opportunities out there, and this happens to be from the Appalachian Trail, Mount Abraham property that we manage, and it's an ecological reserve, so it has a scientific and ecological purpose, as well as being an incredibly scenic part of this Appalachian National Scenic Trail from Maine to Georgia, and a really remarkable regional, national, world significant type of experience.
What an experience, even if you could just go a part of it. You don't have to go
yeah.
from Georgia to Maine or Maine to Georgia, but you can get on the Appalachian Trail. What a wonderful thing to put on your list of things to do.
Yeah.
And one more lovely spot.
Yeah, Holub Pond is on the Moose River, the upper Kennebec near Jackman, and the Moose River
yes.
boat trip, kind of a famous canoe trip in Maine, has got
Right.
places like the Allagash and the Machias. And
You may even see some moose on that trip,
You
right?
may, yes. Yeah, I was up there just earlier this week in that neck of the woods and saw a cow and a little calf moose.
Did you?
So yeah, it's well named.
Yes,
But it's
the
just,
Moose River.
again, it's it's similar to Colonial Pemaquid, even though it's so different in many ways. But I think what's similar is it's a mix of that natural and cultural heritage of sort of our North Woods culture, and it's a great destination for people who want a remote, primitive paddling experience.
Thank you for sharing those
Yeah.
photographs. I know you have thousands more that we would love to see, but more importantly, you want us to get out and see this for ourselves.
Yeah.
Is it expensive to go to a state park?
No, I mean, I think we have, and the rates vary depending on if you're from in-state or out-of-state, if you are, what age you are. If you're 65 or older, for the day at least, you can have free entry.
There,
Yeah.
I like that. 65
Yes.
and older, free admission to
For
all
Maine-
state
yeah,
parks?
Yeah, for Maine residents, yes. And
Maine residents,
yeah,
good.
and
And sometimes they give special things like Father's Day or other things, sometimes.
yes, sometimes, and there's things, if you have a loon license plate, which if you don't have one, I'd encourage picking up one of those when you next register
That's
a
a
vehicle. or-
conservation plate,
It is a
right?
conservation plate, and the monies go to projects
And
for both
Preserving these parks.
yes, for preserving, maintaining these parks. Also, some of the funds go to Department of Inland Fisheries and Wildlife. We share those, and
Okay.
and in July, the middle of July, I believe the 12th and 13th, although you'd want to check the dates. There's if you do have a loon plate, you can get free admission
Okay,
to state
but there are
parks. and-
often different things that come up,
Yes,
so
there are
stay in
things.
touch. Do you have a web page that people
We
can
do.
visit, all right?
The webpage I would kind of plug here is www.parksandlands.com.
Right. I should ask you this, if I get there and I just don't want to leave, can I camp? Is there
Oh, yeah.
a place to camp in the
We
state
have
parks?
we have a number of state park campsites and campgrounds, and those you can call to make a reservation. You can get try to show up and get non-reserve sites. You know, it's always a good idea to check in first, see what the
Okay.
availability is like. There's
You
actually
really do have something for
we get some
everybody,
and
don't
even
you?
recently, if you're a little tech savvy, you can go on, and some of our state parks we're working, you can actually look at the individual campsite photos with
see-
a Google
and
Earth
check it
thing. Yeah,
out.
so you can kind of check it out
And
digitally
I guess
first.
the last thing I'll probably have time to ask you is, what if I want to help maintain your trails or assist with some of these tours? Is there an opportunity for volunteering?
There is a lot of opportunities, and it can range from if you wanted to get out and work with trails. There's groups like this is part of our bureau, the Maine Conservation Corps. You can volunteer with them to work on trail projects. You can contact state park managers. You can also, there's friends groups for certain parks that you could get involved in, and doesn't always have to be, using a shovel. There are other things that you can
Right.
do. There's Maine State Parks has a friends group that's sort of system-wide. So there's a lot of ways. We're not going to turn people away if they have some passion for what we have a passion for.
And I guess I do have time for one more question. What's the next park you're going to visit?
Next park I'm going to visit, well, I personally am probably going to be on some public lands, public reserve lands.
All
where I
right,
can-
we're
yes,
going to
yeah.
come back to our friend Rex Turner for more advice. Thank you so much for sharing, and let's get out in those great public lands and parks. Be right back with more.
Life should be celebrated. It's a special day when family and friends gather together to celebrate the life of a loved one. A celebration of life helps us honor our loved one and keep our memories alive. Whether you're planning a traditional funeral, a creative celebration of life, or a blend of both, At Knowlton Hewins Roberts, we are truly committed to meet the personal and unique needs of you and your family. Knowlton Hewins Roberts. Visit us online or visit our 2 locations in Augusta and Winthrop.
Spectrum Generations. Live healthy, live well. Get answers, get connected. Spectrum Generations, specializing in the art of aging.
Welcome back to Mature Lifestyles. We are indeed enjoying the great outdoors, but somebody's going to help us enjoy it more than ever. We did talk about a few lighthouses in the first segment, but here's a man who has actually lived in a lighthouse. So it is an honor to have Ernest DeRaps, photographer, artist, novelist, and just everything. I don't know what you haven't done, having had a brief conversation with you. Welcome very much to our show.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Now, I don't even know whether to start at the beginning of your life or where we are now, but as I understand that you're not letting age slow you down one bit. And, but I still want to, since we're talking about the great outdoors and lighthouses, you lived in a lighthouse. Would you like to tell us a bit about that?
Well, actually, lighthouse keeping is a 24/7 job, and the main point of lighthouses is to protect those people on the sea. And I was fortunate enough even to save a life while I was a lighthouse keeper. But on the various lighthouses that we lived, my wife and I were on 3 family lights, and I was also on a stag men's only station because of the isolation.
All right, so you had a family on the lighthouse. So I'm going to take just a minute, with your permission, and show you your better half, I think you called her.
That's
her
what she
name
is.
is Pauline.
Goes by Polly.
Polly. She went with this adventure too.
Yes.
And helped you living on the lighthouse. So I love lighthouses, and it's summer, and there's nothing better in Maine than traveling around. Where can I go to see a lighthouse?
There are so many of them. Actually, there are 56 on the coast, and I have painted all of them.
You have painted all of them.
Yes. That's how I got the second edition of the book published.
All right.
Through books, the paintings that I sold.
Now, are these paintings behind? Are these the paintings we're talking about?
Those are reproduced
All
from
right.
the paintings.
Start at the top corner there. Which is that one?
That is Monhegan Island, 10 miles off the coast. Went out there with almost a 2-year-old son and a lady who was expecting.
I hope that was Polly.
That was Polly.
And so your baby was born out on Monhegan?
No. My wife's folks were from Belfast. and
Okay.
She left
Came home
the
for the birth.
island and went in for a week, had the child, stayed another
back.
week, and then came back to
All
the
right, but you
lighthouse.
had 2 little ones and a wonderful family life at that lighthouse.
And I was
So we
the-
can go to that lighthouse today.
You can, but it's 10 miles off the coast. You have to
Good
get
trip,
into
though.
the ferry. Oh, it's very interesting. I've been there many times
All
since
right.
I left it.
And how about the other one?
The next one was Fort Point in Stockton Springs, and I was the first Coast Guardsman to take over those 2 stations from
Yes.
the old lighthouse service people.
And can you visit the one in Stockton Springs?
Yes, go to Stockton Springs and go down to Cape Jellison, and the lighthouse is on the point, which is known as Fort Point because there was a fort built way back in the late 1600s there. And while my wife and I were stationed there, we found out that the federal government wanted to get rid of some of its holdings. Consequently, my wife knew the gentleman who was at that time head of the Maine Parks and Recreation. She called him, and he happened to have been her principal in high school.
I see.
He was able to get enough money to buy a small portion of that land, and it's now a beautiful state park which
Isn't
you
that
can
wonderful?
get to by car.
We can all go. You can drive to that one. So
can
if you're a
drive
little
to
bit
that
uncertain about your walking abilities, and you don't want to take a boat like you do to Monhegan, you can drive to that one. How about the other one with those
Well,
rocks?
that next one you can't get to very easily except by boat. It's on Greens Island, south of Vinyl Haven. And I
Okay.
couldn't bring my family there because of the isolation.
Okay. So
But,
that's where you were alone at that one.
Well, there was actually 3 persons assigned there, but I was there many days alone because
Right.
somebody on sick leave or somebody on leave. So that's the way.
This is
it
one
goes.
we just view if we're riding by in a boat, really.
Exactly.
How about the other one?
Well, this one down here in the bottom left is Brown's Head, and that's on Vinyl Haven, the entrance to the west side of the thoroughfare, Fox Island Thoroughfare between North Haven and Vinyl Haven. It's a shortcut for vessels going from Rockland down east. And on the far right, that's the same lighthouse, but that was a sunset over Rockland across West Penobscot Bay.
That's a wonderful view, and the sunset is gorgeous. How about the middle?
The middle one is Popham, and I did that because it's the most popular lighthouse along the Maine coast, except for perhaps Portland Head, which is
Yes.
more populated.
Right, but we can go to all of those and enjoy them, most of them, unless even if we had a boat, we could go to some of those others. But talk to me again. You've made that, you live there, but you also love them, and you've made a new career out of painting them. When did you take up painting?
8 years ago, when I turned 60, the wife says, it's time for that third retirement.
All right.
I said, what am I supposed to do? Honeydews all day? And I
Nobody
do
wants
have
to
a
do that.
count. I do have a few of those. But anyway, I started painting. I've always drawn, but never had time to paint, raising a family of 6 children. I was always busy taking care of them and the wife. But I finally,
Started when you were 60, so it's never too late.
never too late, I started at 86 painting.
86 painting, 60 was drawing or thinking about that
Actually-
third or fourth career.
Well, actually, I started 80.
All
I've-
right.
I've been painting 6
80.
years.
Okay, 6 years.
Got me confused.
I didn't mean to do that. I don't think much can confuse you.
Well, anyway, I started painting, and the first ones, I used my slides. I've got about 3,000 colored slides as a photographer, and I used them. And I got down to number 14, and I said, where do I go from here? And I read an article. To do a big show, you need a complete series. And I started painting every Maine lighthouse. Took me a year and a half to paint them. They're 16 by 20.
Yes.
And I was able to get into a gallery.
And you
I
had a
sold
show.
enough to have the second edition of the book.
Well, let's talk about that too. Not only did you take up painting, you also wrote a book. And was that also in your 80s?
No, that
was
was
sooner.
back in the 60s,
Oh, well.
late 60s, when my wife and I first got
Well,
more or less out of the service.
I love the book because you have such a great sense of humor. On this side, it is lighthouse keeping. And then on this side, it's light housekeeping. And so it's a double,
2 books in one.
2 books in one, and it's from her perspective and your perspective. Can you tell us a bit about the book?
Well, the book, we started doing lighthouse slideshows at senior groups, at schools, etc. Everywhere we went, it's history.
Yes.
Write it down. It's history.
You're a
Write it
born
down.
teacher. I see that.
So we decided to write it for our own children, for their
Okay.
memories, because 3 of them were born while we were lighthouse keepers. 3 out of the 6.
Exactly. So it's their history as well.
Their history as well. So anyway, we started writing it, and I went to Katy Perry, who's an author and
Yes.
had written many books. I said, would you be kind enough to look through this manuscript and see what you think of it? I thought I might hear from her in a week or so. The very next morning at 8 a.m., she was at our door. She called and said, can I come up? You've got hundreds of stories in this little manuscript. And she's the one that suggested the 2-sided story.
It's a wonderful idea. And people do love stories. And not only is it wonderful for your own children, but it's wonderful for all of us. But you're an inspiration. You've taken up all these new things, but you didn't start at 80. You were a photographer as a very young man. Tell me where you started your photography.
I was in the Navy, and they sent me to photography school in Pensacola, Florida. Beautiful spot, but I missed winter. And eventually, after going through that school and boot camp and all the rest of the Navy stuff, they sent me to the West Coast, and I was flying up and down the coast, taking care of whatever had to be done, looking for things that were irregular or not right from the Japanese, etc., because they used to put stuff right on the West Coast.
You were a very young man too, weren't you?
I was 18.
18, but you always seemed like you had a zest for learning new things. You went to that photographer school and you were an aerial photographer.
Yes.
And look where that's led you, to photography and then to paintings of some of the, I guess you took some photographs sometimes and painted from the photographs?
I now have over 3,000 slides in my collection, and it's difficult to decide which ones to use for a painting.
And did you say you also sometimes had talks with senior groups when you showed the slides?
Yes.
And tell me a little bit about that. What do you tell them about?
Well, I think the first of it, my wife used to go with me, but after a couple of 3 years, she says, it's old hat. I've lived through that.
Right.
So I go pretty much by myself. I do get a small fee to help with gasoline, etc.
Sure.
But I've done 3 already this spring, one in Belfast and one up in, where was the other one, Camden one time. But I get around quite a bit, so.
Well, that's wonderful. What's your advice to others who want to age like you do and have lots of fun and learn new things? What's the secret?
Keeping busy.
Keeping busy.
Active. I walk about a mile a day, and even in sometimes not too good weather, but I try to stay active and I'm busy. Take up a hobby, and don't be a couch potato.
Okay, that's great advice to
And I
anybody.
think one of
I'm sure you've never been a couch potato.
I think one of the things that I feel I would like to tell the elder folks is think positive. Don't say I can't, say I can. If you have a hobby, go into it big. Keep busy. Get off that couch. Keep active.
Sitting on the couch just makes us a little overweight and boring, doesn't it? Because we're watching TV probably too much.
Obesity is a bad problem.
But exercise, you're staying active, and look at you. You're just as happy and active as can be. And your children, tell me a little bit about your children. Are they also interested in photography and lighthouses? I know they know their history now because of your book.
Well, out of the 6, we have a doctorate in philosophy, and he's a Baptist minister. My eldest daughter, he has 2 sons and 8 grandchildren now. And then my oldest daughter was in the Navy, and her daughter and son were both in the service. And my middle daughter, Patricia, married to Mr. Eager. He was a Navy man, and she worked for the down there in Bath at the shipyard. She worked there many years. And the next one is my son, Peter. He is a 20-year Marine.
Thank you so much for sharing your story, and thank you so much for joining us on Mature Lifestyles.
My pleasure.